Hello, listeners. Today we have Shashank Kumar, founder and CEO of DeHaat, an AgriTech startup. And happy to have you here, Shashank. Welcoming you to the podcast. Look forward to an engaging discussion.
Thanks, Gaurav. Thanks for having me.
Great. So I'll start with, briefly, you could just explain what DeHaat does, right? And then we can dig deeper from there.
Well, so DeHaat, essentially, it's a one-stop solution for Indian farmers. If I go a step back, so in India, most of the farmers are small. That means their average landholding is less than 1 to 2 hectares. And regardless of the crop they grow, in fact, and obviously they have certain basic agricultural needs in terms of they want access to quality seed, fertilizer, pesticides. They need information, advisory, financing. Of course, they need market. But in reality, because of the small holding, land holding, building economy of scale for these farmers at an individual level is very difficult. And that's the reason why they have to go through ample of difficulties during each stage of their farming cycle, whether it's pre-harvest or post-harvest. And as a result, again, we all know that average income of one Indian farmer's household in a year is just 70,000-80,000 rupees. As a result, we all are aware of that in India, the overall farm productivity is not that great. And obviously, in fact, that is triggering another challenge related to food security or safety, and so on, so on, so on. But interestingly, again, if you look at the different part or the another part of the value chain where 14% of the national GDP exists actually. So there is a large market which is equivalent to $350 billion. But the challenge and the problem for this multi-billion-dollar market is the lack of transparency, lack of efficiency. So this is the way how, as DeHaat, we defined our problem statement that why we cannot connect every individual Indian farmer to the various agricultural businesses, whether they are agri-input companies or agri-output buyers or an insurance companies or a financial institution as a lender, and which will bring a lot of efficiency for all these agricultural businesses in their own respective business, but at the same time, it will help millions of these farmers to maximize their agricultural income and hence improve their basic livelihood. So that's about DeHaat. That's exactly what we have been doing since last more than a decade. So long story short, we are a bridge between businesses and farmers.
Got it. Very interesting. Very interesting. So I know, a lot of the way things would have evolved in the last 10 years, right? But when you started 10 years back, right, what was the key insight or inspiration, right, with which you started, right, and going after the farmers, right? What was that key insight that you had that led you to start this?
Something similar what I just said, but just to elaborate, I think the key insight was one that in India, if we talk about number of farmers, so there are more than 100 million farmers. They have been into farming since ages, but still as on date, they are looking for quality agricultural value chain services related to input, advisory, output, financing or so. And at the same time, again, the overall inefficiency in this multi-billion-dollar industry, that's huge. So that means the overall sample size of the problem statement is humongous. And hence, if you build a right model, so scalability is not a question. And at the same time, the impact quotient is going to be huge, right? So I think these were the two first thought when we started considering this sector, that one, you can build a very, very large business with such a high degree of impact. And again, that has always been the source of motivation for us to again stay in the sector.
Got it. And you started DeHaat when, of course, AgriTech in startup parlance was not cool, right, as it is today, 10 years down the line. So what has been the journey like, right, over the last 10 years? What are some of the key breakout moments for you, right, which defined DeHaat and the way the company has evolved over the last 10 years?
No, I keep saying that we started when AgriTech was agriculture. I think many, but the good part is that we have been evolving. Somehow, again, we could solve those challenges or the problems, or somehow we could overcome all those breakout moments.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if I highlight few of those, so during early stage, I think the challenge was the acceptance from farmers. And I think that was the first setback, that because that, hey, so we are here in some village of Bihar, we have quit our cushy job, so called, and we came back here to change your life, but still you don't want to change. Right? You, one side you are saying that that you're not very happy with the return from agriculture, but at the same time there is a high inertia, right, in terms of whatever you have been doing since years, right? So that was something which was very difficult for us to understand. But yeah, I think for us it was burn the bridges. So now we just try to think from their perspective, that that why this is happening, right? And that really helped us to understand the farmer's perspective. And that's when we learned that these farmers, they don't have risk taking ability. And that's why, again, I mean, wherever they are, in fact, they have just made up their mind that, all right, I think let's just let it be. Right? If you want them to change the cropping pattern, you are proposing that because that may give them better return, but they see that more from a risk perspective. So that's why I think that helped us to build a farmers first approach or thesis for DeHaat. Maybe a few years later, when the basic model was designed, I would say, but again they saw a kind of risk or fear to switch from conventional to maybe an alternate distribution or aggregation network. But again, that was the time when we learned that probably this is a sector which is not new. So probably I think you will have to deliver first to win the trust from the industry, right? Especially because when their day-to-day business is at stake, right? So that's why you effectively, if you are a supplier to an FMCG company, or if you're buying any agri input from a large seed company, so effectively their entire business is dependent upon your performance. And when, as an organization, when you are very new, neither you have a scale, so their fear or risk was pretty obvious in a way. But yes, then again, we spent few years just to build a certain scale, or maybe a kind of confidence for them that, hey, so this seems working, and so on. At some point of time, again, I mean, I was not alone when I started. We were a group of 5. Again, that was one of the best part of our journey, because when the model was not built, the core team was, and that really helped us again to sustain. Why? Because when one of us used to feel low, then again all others used to be the motivator, or vice versa. But yeah, around 2015, 2016, again, I mean, in a group of 5, one of us opted to go out, decided, because again he just wanted to do something else. Again, that was a moment which was very difficult to accept. Why? Because we thought that, hey, so I think we are here for the rest of our lives, so why this is happening? So yeah, so that was then again in 2018 or so, when we realized that model seems working very well. As a team, as a model, as a platform, probably I think we are now ready to scale. And then we started talking to investors, to raise our first institutional round. By that time, we had raised a couple of angel rounds. We took a lot of debt. But 2018, when we started hitting market to raise our first institutional round, again, it was very difficult, to explain the people that what exactly we were trying to build. Because historically, if you see, nobody else has ever, built or talked about building full stack model, which is like input, output, and for all the crops farmers are growing, right? I mean, people have been working, but either with a crop specific approach or services specific approach. So it was very difficult to convince. But again, we applied the same logic, that we started thinking from the investor's perspective, and we saw that, all right, so business opportunity for them, probably that's not a question, but I think the question is more around the scalability, the execution capability. There is no footprints. We felt more responsibility, right, kind of, on us in a way. And the only thing what we could do is to just keep attempting. I remember, like, after 82 or 83, I had stopped counting how many investors basically we had approached. but yeah, April 2019, we raised our first institutional round. In fact, even again, if I talk about the current context, when we grew by 60x in last 3 months.
Wow.
So at this point, and when we have recruited more than 1,500 people in last 17, 18 months. So then again, I mean, we felt that, hey, so we recruited so many people, but again, all these people are from different background, different culture. And again, the same, probably none of these folks have seen the full stack, version of the work, right? I mean, because either they had worked with any agri input company and they had been selling just one brand, one SKU, or
Yeah.
they had worked with any agri output buyer aggregating just one crop, one commodity in a year. So again, then it was very difficult. It is very difficult to align everyone as per the work ethos. Why? Because there is a history to the organization.
Right.
So yeah, I think there are many. I know I can go on and on, but the good part is that
Yeah.
that any of the setbacks or so-called that breakout moments never came back again. I think
Got it.
that's a good part.
Got it. Got it. So I have like a lot of follow-up questions. So I'll cover the business aspect of it later. But first, like as a entrepreneur, as an individual, right? I mean, you started this in 2011, 12, and by the time you raised funding, it was already 7 years. You had initial challenges in convincing your key stakeholder, which is the farmer, and then challenges around team, right? Somebody moved out. So as an entrepreneur, right, how do you keep yourself motivated, right, when things are not going the way you have planned it to be, right? And during the same time, like startups around you, your peers, your colleagues would have raised money, would have built like large scalable businesses, right? So how do you keep yourself going and keep yourself motivated?
Well, I think two things. One, we always look at the size of the problem statement.
Right.
Size and the importance of the problem statement, that it's a very serious problem to be solved. So if not you, then who else? I mean, you can't expect that anyone else, right? I mean, that somebody from outside of India will come and solve this India specific problem. So that was one. But the second and more important reason, or the way how we could keep ourselves motivated, was that we stayed very close to the problem statement. That means, again, some village, wherever we had our DeHaat centers or node, and
Right.
the size was very small. But at that small size, the change or the impact was quite visible. And I think that really helped us to stay motivated, because when, like, a number of farmers were like just few thousands, but again, all those farmers, in fact, the way how they were getting benefited on day-to-day basis while buying any seed from DeHaat, or while selling their produce, while getting basic advisory, when we could see those turn around, that how, as DeHaat, we are helping them to maximize their income from agriculture, which is like as high as 50 to 70% within a season or
Right.
two. So I think that kept us motivated. That model seems working. I think it's all about figuring out that how we can replicate this model, from one geography to another.
Got it. Got it. Getting back to some of the business point of views, right? So something that I covered in the beginning as well, right? In agri, everybody wants to work with the farmer, right? Because that's where everything originates from. But the challenge is that India, like more than 80% of the farmers have less than 2 hectares in terms of land holding, right? So like very marginal, very fragmented, right? So the two questions come up, right? One is in terms of scalability, right? How do you scale and reach like maximum farmers? That is one. The second question is in terms of monetization, right? These are like marginal, small farmers with like marginal output. So how do you kind of get onto the monetization part of it, right? So one is the scalability part. How do you like reach out to these multiple farmers who were not on the digital platforms at least 5 years back? And then how do you monetize this segment, right? Is there where the monetization lies, or does monetization happen somewhere else?
I'll answer the second part first. So monetization is through commerce. When farmers buy agri input, that's one. And similarly, when they sell the produce, whether it's fruits or veggies or staples, so that's two. And we are not a marketplace. It's a kind of inventory led model. It's a buy and sell model. So we buy all the agri input in bulk, we sell to farmers. Similarly, we buy the farm produce from farmers, we grade it, we sort it, we pack it, and then we sell to all the institution. And to the first part of the question, so basically that's where our advisory comes into the picture. So we've really invested a lot in building a very localized, personalized, customized crop advisory services for farmers. So whichever crop they grow, whichever variety they are growing, based on the weather, based on the date, schedule, they get very exhaustive and thorough crop advisory services, right from pest management to disease management to irrigation to fertilizer, soil test, everything. And we don't charge farmers for this. So that's how basically we use advisory to onboard or to acquire the farmers. Yes, during early days, when the mobile penetration, the data penetration was not that great, it used to be manual. So I still recall we used to use paper and pen literally to register each and every individual farmer.
Wow.
And again, you won't believe when when we used to ask their cell phone numbers so that we could call them to advise them. Like even we used to feel the resistance that, hey, so why should I share my mobile number with you, right? I'm talking about 2012, 13, 14 or so. But again, at the same time, we did not invest in the technology at that point of time, and neither we had resources to invest. But first few years we actually built our content, the advisory content, and then since 2015 onwards we started building technology, and by that time we could experience the point of inflection in terms of adoption of feature phone, followed by 3G, 4G, or so on. And then obviously we kept investing.
Got it. That is interesting. So you did mention some of the changes in behavior, right, over time, like people having no phone to like feature phone and smartphone, right? So overall, how has the sector evolved with time in the last 10 years? One is, of course, the consumer behavior. How has that changed? And second, are there some ecosystem drivers that have enabled a lot of agri companies to build and scale in the last 5, 7, 10 years?
I think a lot. So with respect to time, I think the overall both physical as well as digital infrastructure improved a lot. And that really, that is one of the strong enabler for sure, right? So that means onboarding a farmer is getting easier and easier. Setting up your warehouse, setting up your processing or collection center, that is becoming easier and easier regardless of the location or the state you want to operate in a way. So that's one. At the same time, I would say a lot of other, and obviously entire ecosystem has been working towards this, right? The right policies such as Jandhan, UPI, right? I mean, these are just a few names, but in a way, I think it really helped farmers to start thinking about digital transaction at the same time. Right. I mean, mainstream transaction or communication, whatever it is, right? So many, there are entire ecosystem has been working in this direction. If we look at few of the global, or in general, the global scenarios, right? When everyone is talking about the global population to hit 10 billion by 2050. So then somewhere, I think a couple of years ago, everyone realized that, hey, so it's very important now to start talking about smallholders, right? I mean, because all the large agri input companies or output buyers, in fact, they could reach to large farmers, but globally, everyone realized that, that I think reaching out to smallholders, that's not possible for any of us. And hence, basically, we need a right platform, right? Or we need an alternative, channel of distribution or aggregation, which is very, very important from food safety or security's perspective in a way. So that was like another, reason or agriculture why, in general, at an industry level, there has been an acceptance towards new gen ventures or agri-tech platforms or agri-tech innovations for whichever crop or subsector you're talking about. Right. So there are number of things. But yes, long story short, one is the in general physical and digital infrastructure. Two is the policies or the framework, regulatory framework. And then the third is the point of inflection from the industry side to collaborate with the agri-tech platforms for a larger reason.
Got it. Great. And the other thing is, right, agri is such an important sector, at least in the Indian context, that government too has done a lot, right? Whether it is in terms of extending credit, whether it is in terms of setting up Kisan Kendras, right, for advisory, etc. And it has been going on since ages, right? I mean, for the last 20, 30, 40 years. So do you see that has changed in the last 5, 7 years, or are there ways to work together with the government? What is the role of government?
More catalytic here. So being a government, again, I mean, they have a budget for R&D or agricultural research or innovation. But
Right.
at the same time, when it comes about extension or taking those innovations to every single farm or farmer, I think that's where obviously, again, people like us come into the picture. Similarly, building infrastructure, like warehouses or anything, right? Or maybe building right policies so that you can export agricultural produce from India to different parts of globe, right? So the role of government is more catalytic. And I think, and that's why, but it's very encouraging the way how now in general, and you must be knowing that agri is a state subject. It's not a
Yep.
central subject, right? But in most of the states, in fact, we have been seeing now the way how government are very, very sort of inclined towards public-private partnership for any of the intervention or activity. So again, that is another point of inflection. For example, uh, now in many of the states or even at center, especially at the level of Niti Aayog, I'm hearing now government is talking about building a data stack so
Yeah.
that whatever, let's say, the public data they have related to direct beneficiary transfer or related to fertilizer subsidy allocation or related to Kisan credit card. In fact, they're talking about giving access to this public data to private players so that again, there can be some interoperability.
Right.
So obviously, I think this is exactly what is expected from any government because government cannot transact with farmers, right? Whether it's input or output or insurance or lending for that matter. But they can definitely become a strong catalyst or an enabler, and that's slowly and steadily that's happening.
Got it. Got it. Moving on, talking a little bit about the role of tech in agri, right? Because the core stakeholder is a farmer, and of course, over the last few years, they have started adopting smartphones and data, etc. Right? But do you see tech has a big role to play here, or do you think tech will be an enabler? You need to be present on the ground, feet in street, working with the farmers or the mandis, or do you think tech can change things? You can have a pure play digital platform where people come and transact and do business.
Well, the tech certainly has a big role to play, and maybe, but again, largely as an enabler, or
Hmm.
maybe the journey first as an enabler, and then later as a revenue generator as well.
Right.
And but firstly as an enabler, right? So, for example, even in our scheme of things, again, because of tech, now, yeah, while serving 1.5 million farmers, at while again managing close to 2.4 million hectares of land, while operating in more than 178 districts of India, while delivering agri input, while aggregating produce from more than 110,000 villages of India. Imagine it's just the tech, right? Which is again helping us to reach to this scale, and
Right.
largely because of tech, at any given point of time, we have complete visibility, complete transparency. That what's happening where, right? Like in terms of where is the inventory, how inventory is moving, how basically again whether the SOPs at ground level being followed properly or not, whether again imagine that every farmer receives an advisory alert every week, right? Technically, we spend close to 5 million minutes every month while talking to farmers, while guiding them for sustainable agriculture practices, right? But at the same time, the team size to manage this is very, very lean. That's not possible without tech. Every month, we are onboarding 1,000 DeHaat micro entrepreneurs, which is equivalent to 10,000 villages effectively. But the team size managing this space is only just 5 or 6 member team. It is not possible without tech. So, and more importantly, again, you are in the business of bringing efficiency and transparency for this $350 billion industry, right? So that means you have to invest in the tech so that again you can build the transparency first for yourself, which will help you to reach out to scale, and then later to pass on the same transparency to your business associates. So that's what I meant when I said that firstly as an enabler, and then after some point of time, again as a revenue generator too.
Great. That is very helpful. You did mention earlier that you and your team, right, used to stay close to the farmers, used to stay in villages where you had farmers and customers, right? And of course, the tech happened much later, like 2015, 16, 17 is when you build the tech platform, right? So if you could share some like anecdotes or examples where working closely with your customers gave you some insights that help you develop the product in a much better way rather than just sitting in Bangalore or Gurgaon and then building tech for the ecosystem?
Again, infinite funny stories. For example, I recall back in 2013 and 14, we had introduced baby corn as a crop in Bihar. We trained farmers to grow baby corn, and we gave them complete assurance to buy the produce, right? Because obviously they had a fear that that let's say in the local market or the local aggregator or the local mandi cannot buy this produce, right? And obviously and we thought that probably, I think strategically we did all the right things, because we shortlisted corn farmers, those farmers who have been growing corn, and more or less the farming practice of corn is similar to baby corn in a way. So I remember like one of the evening, in fact, we were there at the farm and we were guiding the farmer that, hey, so tomorrow morning you have to harvest it early morning, 4 a.m. By 6 a.m. we'll send our mini truck, and then we'll load it and we'll take it. And we thought that he got convinced that, or he understood what he had to do. But for him, the plant was same as corn, right? Yeah. And obviously the harvest was little, right? Because it was a baby corn. So I remember like at 2:30 or 3 a.m., in fact, he called that, sir, are you sure I have to harvest it? Because this is not grown fully, right? This still very small. And we were like, hey, so no, we talked yesterday, right? I mean, this is baby corn. This is not corn. You have to harvest this. Don't worry, we'll pay you. But he was like, it was so difficult. So I think that was the time. And again, there were many, right? I mean, so long story short, like initially we thought that, hey, so farmers are growing conventional crops like rice, wheat. Why can't we encourage these farmers to grow crops like papaya, banana, baby corn, or herbs, right? Because these all crops are highly remunerative crops. Yeah. It may solve their problem. But I think like one of the early lessons basically we had that, hey, so again, what I keep quoting, right? I mean, that you can't sell, hide and seek to a Parle-G customer. So right. I think that means, and again, we also felt that we are in the business of building trust. So that means firstly, we'll have to work around the same crops or the prevailing crops, what they have been growing. And basically we'll have to bring efficiency around those prevailing crops. That will bring some trust. And then probably I think we should start recommending the new crops, right? And obviously now that has become a DNA. The second bit is again, just maybe I'll double click the same piece, which is the trust. Is that and we felt that that again the trust can only come when they will feel that you as a service provider know them very well. So, and that's the reason why our advisory content is super customized and very much localized, and not just for states. Even for district, even for block. Why? Because in rural area, the same disease or same pest attack is known by different names, different lingos within a state, within a district. So I think those were a few things which really helped us to basically understand the perspective of an individual farmer, and more importantly, it really helped us to build that. Farmers first thesis. You talked about Krishi Vigyan Kendra, right, which is built by the government, right? So each and every district across India, there is one Krishi Vigyan Kendra. Yep. And these are the extension of agriculture universities. And we were like that, hey, it's such a great infrastructure at every district. And at the same time, farmers, they need advisory intervention. Why these farmers, they are not going to KVK? Why there is such a low footfall? And then we understood that we are talking about a mass for whom annual income is 70,000 rupees. That means monthly is 6,000 rupees. That means daily is 200 rupees. And it's not like that at the end of the day, they get 200 rupees in the pocket. So that and then the Krishi Vigyan Kendra is 50, 60, 80 kilometers far from your village as a farmer. That means your to and fro cost itself will be 60, 70 rupees, which is 30% of your P&L. And that's obvious that probably you may not spend 30% of your entire income just for one advisory query. And that there'll be many such advisory related requirements every season, right? Right. These are the things again which really help us to understand that how an individual farmer in India think. Right. What we are seeing in reality, whether it's low footfall at KVK, whether 80% of net sown area under low value crops like rice and wheat, whether farmers are not really willing to change. But again, because of our, again, closer proximity to them or with them, we understood that what's the reason behind these facts.
That's very interesting, right? I mean, the point that you made about that it has to be customized to a village level. You can't even think of like a state level. If you're giving advisory or input, right, it has to be customized and tailor-made to a village level or at an individual level, right? So that's very interesting. Going back to the question of profit pools, right? So you did say that the money is in distribution if you help them sell the product to the market, right? We have seen, at least in India, right, any business eventually gets into the lending, right? You're not a true Indian startup catering to Indian customer if you don't get into lending, whether you're SaaS, whether you're commerce, anything, right? So what is your point of view on the lending side of things? Do you think that is an interesting opportunity, at least in the agri landscape?
That is an interesting opportunity, but we don't see ourselves doing by ourselves. Why? Because again, we don't have that DNA, we don't have that capability, but we see us playing a very large role in this. And just to give you a context here, that overall lending is strongly mandated by the government, right? Because banks are strongly mandated to lend under that priority sector lending. But despite of at ground level, you will find less than 13-14% Indian farmers have got access to structured, financing. And as a result, even as on date, their average borrowing rate is 3 to 5% monthly. Okay. So the same story, right? I mean, that there are a number of banks, they want to lend, but there are millions of farmers. So the reason is that, again, I mean, that banks, they don't know the farmers in terms of data, nor in terms of any history. And that's where we feel that, that as DeHaat probably, we have a role to play. Why? Because we know the farmer. And not just we know the farmer it's because of any one-time task or activity, but because of a series of transaction or interaction, again, we have been going through, right? Because every season they are buying something, they're selling something, they're talking to us. So, and hence all these communicational or transactional, data sets can be leveraged to bridge the gap. Then at some point of time, we started digitizing the land parcel as well. We started fetching data from satellite every week. So that means I said, okay, all right, so not just the farmer, but even now we have information about their respective farms as well, with the help of that spatial data, that how each and every individual farm is behaving. Right. So then now we are talking about leveraging all these spatial, behavioral, and transactional data sets, for the banks or financial institutions, so that they can use these data sets for their own underwriting. But we are not neither we are thinking about lending by ourselves, because that's not our DNA.
Got it. Great. While I was doing some research, I did see that you guys have launched 2 brands, right? Honest Farms and Farm Plus. So could you share some insight? What are the thought process? Because your core customers was farmer, you were helping them with advisory input and then connecting them to institutional buyers, right? Now launching your own line of products.
I think it's the same intent, same effort. Sorry to interrupt, but it's we speak internally, right? I mean that farmers are the ones who buy everything in retail and sell everything again in wholesale. Right? In a way they are a manufacturer, right?
Right. Yeah.
But you will not find any other manufacturer with no right or option of setting the price of the produce or the product they are manufacturing. But that's the irony with Indian farmers. So yes, we are B2B, but at the same time, we saw that larger part of market share doesn't belong to any institution, right? When you talk about fruits and vegetables, so less than 15% market share belongs to modern trade, retail, or e-commerce players, right? Still 85% market share that's still with the conventional folks, right? So it's true on the staple side as well. So that's why, again, we thought that, hey, so, and at the same time, again, our volume has grown significantly. Imagine that every day we are aggregating currently 4,000 ton of produce.
Wow.
Last year at this point of time, this volume used to be in range of just 600, 700 ton. So that means with the same ratio, next year, this will be again more than 20,000 ton in a way. So we thought that probably, I think at this point of time, it's great that, that we are, selling to institution, but I think at some point of time, because our aim is to onboard as many farmers as possible. I think at some point of time, probably we may have to build a captive demand, right? I mean, so that probably we'll be in a position to serve these farmers. So these are very, very early initiatives, but with this intent that how we can expand the market options or the market channels for our farmers for their various produce, whether it's vegetables or fruits or staples.
Got it. Very interesting. Switching gears, I mean, we covered a lot about agri and the way you have navigated the last 10 years. Talking a little bit about org building, right? You did mention that you have hired 1,500 people in the last 12 months, or you've grown like 60x in the last 3 months, and then from like 600 tons to like 4,000 tons, right? So what are some of the challenges that come with this scale, right? And how are you going about managing this from a operations point of view, from like managing supply and figuring out demand, etc., right? So if you just walk us through a little bit about that. Managing scale, how do you go about doing that in a short span of time?
Well, to be very honest, I think managing scale on the ops side, I think we did not face a challenge. I think largely because of the strong foundation we have laid in the past. So, and at first 7 years, we did not grow at all because we were actually preparing ourselves for this scale. So on that part, we didn't see a scale. Every year, we surprised everyone, whether the market, our investors, or our team members themselves, right? That let's say every time, and obviously we're talking about the last 3 years when sometimes you had COVID, sometimes your supply chain was broken, sometimes, and now in the current time when the overall cost of capital has gone up, the market scenario is entirely different. So every year, in fact, we surprise people on that side, and I think that has been the strength, of DeHaat, which is a unique execution capability, which we have. But I think the challenge was more again on the team building, on the org building. While we could recruit people because we had all the right resources, but as I said, that ensuring behavioral change in those people, and that too again in a very quick manner, I think that's where we faced a lot of a challenge. So and why? Because you had been growing. Imagine. As on 31st March 2019, we had only 38 DeHaat centers. We had our operations only in 3 districts. And now we are talking about, again, close to 180 districts and 10,000 DeHaat centers. I mean, within 40 months. So I think the larger challenge was more around the cultural alignment. But I believe that every organization has to go through this process. And this is very important and integral part for any enterprise in a way. We have been learning to, again, and a lot of initiatives, again, we have taken already on that piece. One, like our own internal, modules and academy to train people, for the, and again, and not just challenge, not just in terms of cultural alignment, but challenge also in terms of the right skills, right? Because as I said, that nobody else as an individual had ever experienced this full stack, aspect of the operations, right? So also the training, the capacity building, the skill building, enhancement. So but again, as you can understand that we are here for rest of our life in a way. So then over the year, then early this year, again, we launched our own, academy, DeHaat Academy, for our own set of people, where everyone has to go through those courses. It's similar to college, that that you have to go through those courses, you have to pass the examination and all those things, right? So many initiatives we took, but in terms of in relative terms, this was the challenge actually we faced, which was not on the operation side, but more on the team building side, whether getting the right skills on the table or getting the culture aligned as per your work ethos.
Got it. That is very interesting, right? I mean, when you're preparing for scale, building an internal academy so that anybody who comes in knows what the company does, what the culture is like, so that people get the ground running as soon as they can, right? So that is a very interesting takeaway here. So moving on to the last part, right? We have a few more minutes. So I know a lot of things have changed in the agri ecosystem over the last 10 years, right? And you did have a long gestation period because you were on the ground building for scale, preparing for scale. So if you had to do it today, right, what you have built so far, or if any new entrepreneur is starting up in the agri space, let's first go to, I mean, if you had to do it all over again today with the current infra and systems that we have, would you do anything different in terms of building this?
Surely, because overall situation, positioning, the circumstances have changed a lot.
Yeah.
So obviously, differently. I think when we started at that point of time, we could afford, going slow for initial few years. Why? Because again, one, the overall entrepreneurial ecosystem was not ready. Two, the overall digital ecosystem was not ready, right? I mean, so those were the reason largely. While we don't have any regret. In fact, that's one of our again golden days when we developed our core competency or strength in a way. But yeah, to coming to your question, I think this maybe if we have to do it differently, if we have to do it again, and in the current situation, I would say I would prefer investing in technology as earliest as possible. And that means probably, I think then you need to manage your resources, whether it's your own money or you raise or you or how do you manage, that's your problem. but investing in technology as earliest as possible, because now the time is right. Everyone is ready to accept, to adopt the technology, and this sector is all about scale. And without technology, again, one can never get to the right scale to bring any change.
Got it. Great. The other thing, I mean, the scale that you are at right now with like close to 175, 180 districts, more than 1 lakh villages that you cater to, and you work across the value chain from input to advisory to output, right? So with that lens in mind, of course, you'd see like a lot of interesting opportunity areas that may come up for you, right? We spoke about lending a while back, but from that point of view, right, what are the areas that you see which are where new opportunities have come up within the agri space, where new startups can come in and build something within the agri landscape overall?
Well, so firstly, it's not a winner takes all. So that means, again, despite of the fact that DeHaat has been working in certain geography with a certain approach, or any other agri-tech player, even in the same geography with the same approach, one can find enough headroom to come. Firstly, but yes, but I see couple of things where, and again, and the beauty is the way how hundreds of agri-tech startup have emerged, or they started their journey, especially in last 3-4 years, which is great, and that's a need of our from the sector's perspective. But my view here is that there are few opportunities which are really untapped, such as financing piece, as I think we briefly touched already. You will, even as on date, you will not find even a single model which is tailor made for farmers financing, right? There are a number of NBFCs, there are a number of fintech players, but they are still B2B, FPOs, retailer, processor. But again, a farmers friendly fintech model still yet to be seen, yet to be emerged. So is true on the insurance side, right? I mean, that's another, again, ocean. So far, insurance is something which is being taken care by the government, but that's just for a tick mark, with all due respect. So in the overall insurance, whether it's weather insurance or the crop insurance or the yield insurance, again, that's another area. The third is the agri-bio, because the entire world is moving away from chemicals. And obviously, it wouldn't be good to know 4 years, 5 years, 6 years down the line about net import dependency for India on biofertilizer, biopesticide as well, right? So that means the overall bio or bio-ag related innovation, it has to start today. Otherwise, we'll end up with importing biofertilizer, biopesticide again, the way how we have been importing MOP and DAP from other countries in a way. So I think these three, and last not the least, is the overall digital extension or digital advisory to farmers. Again, the time is right. Now farmers, they have right device in their hand. They have willingness to pay. So earlier
advisory, that is the question that we always keep asking. Will farmers pay for advisory? Because you mentioned earlier, right, that the real monetization opportunity is to help them sell their produce, right? So do you think
that so we chose that route. It doesn't mean that farmers cannot pay. So that was our, and why? Because again, I mean, we aim to aggregate more than 30-35 million farmers of India, right? But that one can be happy to work with just 1 million farmers, paying maybe $10-15 in a year or so, right? So probably digital extension or digital advisory on again paper usage basis to farmers. I think that's another area where one can explore.
Got it. So you did touch upon lending and insurance at Prime. I mean, of course, that's one core focus area for us. The thing that you struggle with always is the data, right? Thin file problem of farmers, right? There is no GST data, there's no transaction data, right? So what is the right way of going about lending? Is it first you build advisory, first you build transactions, and once you have enough data, once you have close relationship with farmers, that is when you do lending? Or do you have feet on street, go acquire farmers and do it the hard way?
Well, so that's what I'm saying, right? Now, because of the mobile and UPI penetration, now you don't need feet on street. That's one.
Right.
Secondly, you can find other players, not necessarily us as DeHaat, or not necessarily someone who is only working in agri, but in general, you'll find different players operating in rural area as a runners, right? Or maybe as a volunteers, right? Imagine how this entire Aadhaar detail, would have been captured, right? And it was all by, franchise equivalent people, right? I mean, there were not even a single person on a fixed payroll who was collecting the data, right? So the ecosystem is right, so that again one can think about this digital innovation to collect all the right data sets or the right risk modeling, for the banks or the financial institution. That's a business call whether you want to lend it through your own balance sheet or not. That's a separate debate.
Got it. Great. That is very helpful. One final question, and then we'll wrap up. If you have any message for upcoming entrepreneurs, whether they're building in agri or otherwise, right, given your own journey over the last 10 years with a lot of grit and patience and determination. So any message for entrepreneurs building today?
I think the current market scenario, it's not a bull market, right? And I feel that this kind of condition is the best time to build the innovation, to build the enterprise, because the great enterprises are always built in crisis. So it's a right time to build your enterprise or to start your enterprise in a way, and you will be valued rightly if your foundations are correct. So whatever is the thought, whichever sector, one should not get feared that, hey, market is down, whether I'm going to get investment or not. I think one should not think about all those crap. It's just that that I think it's the right time to start your enterprise, because history has number of evidences when great organizations are built during the recession and the crisis time.
Great. So thanks a lot, Shashank. With that, we'll wrap up the podcast. But it was a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Gaurav. Enjoy the conversation.
Dear listeners, thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast app for free, and you'll be the first one to know when new episodes are available. Just search for Prime Venture Partners Podcast in Apple Podcast, Spotify, Castbox, or however you get your podcasts. Then hit subscribe. And if you have enjoyed the show, we would be really grateful if you leave us a review on Apple Podcast. To read the full transcript, find the link in the show notes.